The lecture hall buzzed with quiet conversations in dozens of languages. Students from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that adjusted to each species' unique body shape. The air recyclers worked overtime to keep the atmosphere breathable for everyone. Professor Zethkar walked to the center of the room. His tall, blue-skinned frame moved with the grace that all Vorthons possessed. Forearms gestured as he spoke, while his large black eyes scanned the classroom. He had been teaching xenobiology for over 200 years, and today's topic was his favorite. Welcome, students. His voice carried easily through the translator devices. Today we discuss the newest members of the Galactic Confederation, humans. A ripple of interest passed through the room. Everyone had heard of humans, but few had met one in person. They were still rare in galactic society, having joined only 5 years ago. Tell me, Professor Zethkar continued, what do you know about this species? A Draknari student raised one of his 4 clawed hands. His red scales caught the light as he spoke. They reproduce quickly, Professor. Much faster than most civilized species. True, the professor nodded. What else? A crystalline zephyrite chimed in, her voice like music. They adapt their technology rapidly. In just 50 years, they went from primitive chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. Also correct. They are remarkably adaptable. The professor's expression grew more serious. But here is my question for today. Of all the species we have encountered in our long history of galactic civilization, why might humans be the most dangerous? The room fell silent. Students exchanged glances. Most species in the Confederation were peaceful traders or scholars. The few warrior races like the Draknari were bound by strict honor codes. What could make humans more dangerous than any of them? A tall insectoid klaxon student clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Perhaps their aggression? We have heard stories of their wars. A good guess, Professor Zethkar said. Humans do have a history of conflict, but so do many species. The Draknari fought wars for thousands of years before joining us. Their unpredictability suggested a small, furry Yithak. Their emotions seem to drive many of their decisions. Emotions can be dangerous, the professor agreed, but emotional species are not uncommon. The Altarians base their entire culture on emotional bonds. More suggestions came from around the room, their short lifespans making them reckless, their willingness to take risks, their pack-bonding behavior that made them fiercely protective of their groups. Professor Zethkar acknowledged each answer but shook his head. In the back corner, a young human woman had been listening quietly. Sarah. Mitchell was one of only 3 humans at the university, part of an exchange program. She had brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and wore the plain gray uniform that all students used. Her blue eyes watched the professor with interest. What about you, Miss Mitchell? Professor Zethkar asked, noticing her silence. Surely, you have insight into your own species' nature. Sarah stood up slowly. The room turned to look at her. She could feel dozens of alien eyes watching her every move. Some looked curious, others seemed almost afraid, as if she might suddenly reveal some terrible human secret. Professor, she said, her voice calm and clear, we're dangerous because we remember. The room erupted in surprised chatter. Professor Zethkar held up one of his hands for silence, but his expression showed amusement. Remember? He repeated. Miss Mitchell, with respect, memory is hardly unique to humans. The Vorthons have perfect digital memory storage. We can recall any moment of our lives with complete accuracy. The crystalline Zephyrite can access their ancestral memories, added a student. They remember things that happened thousands of years before they were born. And we Draknari never forget a debt or an insult, growled the red-scaled student. Our honor depends on perfect memory. Sarah waited for the voices to die down. Then she spoke again, her voice still calm. You store information, you access data, but that's not the same as remembering. Professor Zethkar's 4 eyes blinked. In sequence, a sign of confusion among his people. I'm afraid I don't understand the difference, Miss Mitchell. You can delete digital memories, Sarah explained. You can choose not to access them. You can edit them or change them. Even ancestral memories can be filtered or interpreted differently over time. She looked around the room, meeting the gaze of as many students as she could. Humans remember differently. We remember with our hearts. We tell stories. We build monuments. We name our children after the dead. We carry our memories in our culture, in our songs, in our very souls. A Zephyrite. Student chimed softly. But your biological memory is so flawed. You forget things constantly. You misremember events. Your memories change every time you recall them. Individual memory, yes, Sarah agreed. But human memory isn't individual. It's collective. When something important happens to us, we all remember it. Every human child learns about it. Sure, it becomes part of who we are. Professor Zethkar laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Miss Mitchell, you speak as if this primitive emotional attachment to the past is some kind of strength. We have evolved beyond such inefficient sentimentality. Have you? Sarah asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Professor Zethkar's amusement faded slightly. What do you mean? I mean, Professor, that you've forgotten things that might have been important. Your people, all of your people, have learned to let go of the past so completely that you can't learn from it. We learn from historical data, the professor said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Data isn't memory, Sarah replied. Data doesn't carry emotion. It doesn't carry meaning. It doesn't make you feel anything when you access it. She sat back down, but her voice carried clearly through the silent room. You asked why humans might be dangerous. It's because we don't just remember facts. We remember feelings. We remember pain. We remember kindness. We remember betrayal. And we let those memories guide us. The professor stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head, his amusement returning. An interesting theory, Miss Mitchell. But I think you overestimate the importance of emotional attachment to the past. Maybe, Sarah said with a small smile. You'll understand someday, Professor. As the lecture ended and students began filing out, small groups formed in the hallways. The topic of human memory dominated every conversation. Kexran, the Dreknari student, walked with several others toward the cafeteria. What did she mean about remembering with hearts? He asked. Hearts pump blood. They don't store information. Silas, a young Vorthon, accessed her memory files quickly. Human speech patterns often use metaphor. Heart likely refers to emotional processing centers in their brains. But why would emotional memory be dangerous? Asked Thix, a klaxon. Emotions fade. Logic endures. Maybe that's what she meant, suggested Vel, an Altarian whose fur was shifting to confused purple colors. Maybe human emotions don't fade the way ours do. They found a table in the diverse cafeteria and continued their discussion over various forms of nutrition suited to their different biologies. I've read about human culture, Silas said, downloading information as she spoke. They do seem unusually attached to their past. They have buildings dedicated entirely to storing old objects. They call them museums. And they still read physical books, added Thix with a click of amazement. Actual paper with chemical ink. It's incredibly inefficient. Kexran's scales darkened with thought. They also build monuments to their dead, not just leaders or heroes. Sometimes they build monuments to remember ordinary people who died in conflicts. Why would they do that? Vel asked, her fur now shifting to pale yellow with curiosity. Humans said they named children after the dead, Silas recalled. That suggests some form of ancestral veneration, but not in the same way as Zephyrite. As they discussed, none of them noticed Sarah Mitchell sitting alone at a nearby table. She was reading from an actual paper book, just as Thix had mentioned. The book was old, its pages yellow with age. The title read, Never Forget, Lessons from Human History. Sarah turned a page and continued reading about events from centuries past. Wars and betrayals, but also kindnesses and sacrifices. Stories that every human child learned. Stories that shaped how humans saw the world and their place in it. She thought about Professor Zethkar's dismissive laughter. She thought about the confusion of her fellow students. They truly didn't understand. To them, the past was just information to be stored or discarded as needed. But Sarah knew something. They didn't. Something that would become clear in time. Human memory wasn't just about storing information. It was about carrying forward the weight of experience. It was about learning not just facts, but meanings. It was about making sure that the lessons of the past lived on in the present. As she closed her book and prepared to leave, Sarah whispered something her grandmother had taught her, something every human child learned. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The alien students around her continued their discussions trying to understand human nature, but they would only truly understand when they saw human memory in action, when they learned what it really meant when humans said, "We remember." That day would come sooner than any of them expected. The New Horizon moved through space like a sleeping giant. 3 kilometers long and shaped like a massive cylinder, the colony ship carried the hopes and dreams of 50,000 humans. Families had sold everything they owned for a chance to start fresh on a new world. Children pressed their faces against viewports, watching stars drift by like distant fireflies. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the orange glow of Proxima Centauri grow larger ahead of them. After 18 months of travel, they were finally approaching their new home. Proxima Centauri b waited for them, a rocky planet in the habitable zone of the nearest star to Earth. Estimated time to orbital insertion? Jake asked his navigation officer. 14 hours, Captain, replied Lieutenant Amy Foster, checking her instruments. All systems are green. The colonists are already preparing for the landing sequence. Jake nodded and walked to the observation deck. Through the clear, aluminum windows he could see the planet growing larger. Red and brown continents stretched beneath white clouds. It wasn't Earth, but it would be home for thousands of families. Below in the colony sections, children ran through corridors while their parents prepared for a new life. Dr. Peter Walsh checked his medical supplies one more time. Engineer Lisa Parker helped her 8-year-old daughter Emma pack her favorite stuffed animal. Teacher Mark Johnson reviewed lesson plans for the first school on Proxima B. They had no idea they were being watched. War Commander Theknol observed the human ship from his hidden position behind Proxima's second moon. His Draknari battle fleet consisted of 12 warships, each one designed for destruction. The ships were dark and angular, built for war rather than exploration. "The humans approach our territory," growled his second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Vextar. "Should we warn them to leave?" Theknol's red eyes glowed with anticipation. "This is neutral space according to their Galactic Confederation laws, but we claimed this system 300 years ago. These soft mammals dare to colonize what belongs to the Draknari Empire. The Confederation will protest if we attack without..." "Warning," Vextar pointed out. "Let them protest," Theknol snarled. "Words mean nothing. Power is what matters. These humans are weak. They will learn to fear Draknari strength." The New Horizon continued its approach, unaware of the danger. Captain Morrison was reviewing colonization protocols when his communications officer called out. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's aggressive in tone." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The bridge's main display showed a Draknari. Furson red scales covered sharp features and yellow eyes burned with hatred. "Human vessel, you will leave this system immediately. This is Draknari territory." Captain Morrison stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the colony ship New Horizon. According to Galactic Confederation law, this system is designated as neutral space. We have legal rights to establish a colony here." War Commander Theknol laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "Your Confederation laws mean nothing here, mammal. Leave now or be destroyed." "I cannot do that," Jake replied, calmly. "We have 50,000 civilians aboard this ship, families with children. We've traveled for over a year to reach this world. We're not military. We're just people looking for a new home." "Then you will die for your foolishness," Theknol snarled. The transmission cut off. Captain Morrison immediately called a red alert, but the New Horizon was not a warship. It had basic defensive shields and no weapons beyond small mining lasers. It was designed to carry people and supplies, not fight battles. Incoming. Ships, called the sensor officer. 12 vessels heading straight for us. The Draknari fleet came out from behind the moon like hunting predators, their weapons charged with deadly energy as they closed the distance rapidly. All hands, prepare for emergency evacuation, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. This is not a drill. All families report to escape pod stations immediately. Throughout the ship, alarms blared. Parents grabbed their children and ran for safety. Lisa Parker held Emma close as they hurried toward the nearest escape pod bay. Dr. Walsh abandoned his medical supplies to help elderly colonists move faster. The first Draknari weapons struck the New Horizon with terrible force. Energy beams tore through the ship's hull like paper. Sections began decompressing, venting atmosphere and people into the cold vacuum of space. Return fire, Captain Morrison ordered desperately. The mining lasers barely scratched the Draknari ship's armor. It was like throwing stones at tanks. Another barrage of weapons fire hit the colony ship. This time, the main reactor began failing. Jake knew. They had minutes before the ship was destroyed completely. All escape pods, launch immediately, he commanded. Don't wait for full capacity. Pods began ejecting from the dying ship. Small capsules carrying terrified families shot away from the New Horizon like seeds from a burning tree. But the Draknari were not done. War Commander Theknol watched the escape pods launching and felt only contempt. Destroy them all, he ordered. Leave no survivors to tell tales. Sir, they're just civilians, Vextar said uncertainly. The Confederation, laws about civilian protection, are written by weaklings, Theknol finished. Civilians who remember become enemies later. Better to eliminate all problems now. The Draknari ships turned their weapons on the escape pods. One by one, the small craft were vaporized. Bright flashes marked the end of entire families. Children, parents, grandparents, teachers, doctors, engineers, all erased in moments. Lisa Parker's pod was among the few that escaped the immediate slaughter. She held Emma tightly as their tiny craft tumbled through space, its small engine, pushing them away from the battle. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" Emma whispered. Lisa couldn't answer. Peter's pod had been one of the first destroyed. Through the small viewport she could see the New Horizon breaking apart, pieces of their former home spinning away into darkness. 57 escape pods had launched. Within an hour, only 4 remained intact, their survivors hidden among the debris field of their former home. Dr. Alex Turner was conducting research on a nearby observation station when his sensors detected the destruction. His small scientific vessel was no match for Draknari warships, but he was too far away for them to notice him anyway. He watched in horror as an entire human colony was destroyed. 50,000 people, gone in less than 2 hours. When the Draknari fleet departed satisfied with their work, Alex risked moving closer to search for survivors. He found Lisa Parker and Emma in their damaged pod, along with 38 other survivors scattered across 3 other pods. They were the only humans left alive from 50,000. "What happened?" Alex asked as he brought the survivors aboard his ship. Lisa looked at him with empty eyes. "They came without warning, no negotiation, no mercy. They just killed everyone." Emma clutched her stuffed animal, the only thing she had left from her old life. "The monsters killed Daddy," she whispered. Alex sent emergency transmissions to Earth and to Galactic Confederation headquarters. Help would come, but too late to matter. Word of the Proxima massacre spread quickly through galactic communication networks. The Confederation condemned the attack in strongly worded statements. Diplomatic protests were filed. Economic sanctions were discussed. But the Draknari Empire was powerful with many allies and trading partners. War Commander Theknol was quietly transferred to a different assignment. The Empire claimed the attack was a misunderstanding, that the humans had been warned to leave but failed to comply with territorial boundaries. The Confederation offered compensation to humanity for their loss, credits and resources to help rebuild what was lost. Most species considered this adequate justice. After all, conflicts happen sometimes in space. The important thing was to move forward and maintain peace. Other galactic species read about the incident in their news feeds for a few days, then moved on to other concerns. The Vorthons filed the information in their digital archives. The Zephyrite added it to their historical records. The Altarians felt sad for a brief period, then focused on more immediate matters. Within a month, most of the galaxy had forgotten about Proxima Centauri b. It was just another small tragedy in the vast scope of galactic civilization. But humans, don't forget. On Earth, emergency sessions of the Human Colonial Council lasted for days. Every detail of the attack was analyzed. Every survivor's testimony was recorded. Every piece of wreckage was studied. The names of all 50,000 victims were compiled into a massive database. Their faces, their dreams, their families, everything about them was preserved. Children as young as 5 years old learned about the Proxima massacre in school. Lisa Parker testified before the Colonial Council, holding Emma's hand as she spoke. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with something deeper than grief. "They didn't just kill our people," she said. "They killed our children. They killed families. They killed hope itself." Dr. Alex Turner provided technical details about the attack, the complete lack of warning, the deliberate targeting of escape pods, the systematic execution of civilians. It wasn't war, he explained to the packed hearing room. It wasn't even conquest. It was extermination. They wanted to erase us completely. News of the massacre spread through human space like wildfire. Every human colony, every space station, every ship learned what had. 2 years had passed since the Proxima massacre, but Sarah Mitchell could still remember every word of her conversation with Professor Zethkar. She stood now in the shuttle approaching Earth, watching her home planet grow larger through the viewport. She was no longer the quiet exchange student from the university. Her doctoral work on comparative memory patterns had made her famous throughout human space. More importantly, it had made her dangerous. Sarah now understood exactly why humans were different from every other species in the galaxy. The shuttle touched down at the memorial site just outside New Geneva. Sarah stepped off onto ground that had been carefully prepared for this day. Every piece of soil had been brought from Proxima Centauri b itself, carried back by the research ships that had studied the massacre site. The Proxima Memorial stretched across 50 acres of Earth. 50,000 white stones stood in perfect rows, each one bearing the name, face, and story of someone who died. Children who would never grow up, parents who would never see their kids take first steps, grandparents who would never tell bedtime stories again. At the center of the memorial stood a larger stone monument. Carved into its black surface were the last words transmitted from the New Horizon: "Tell them we came in peace." Sarah walked slowly through the rows of stones, reading names aloud. She wasn't alone. Millions of humans had come to Earth for the memorial dedication. They came from every human colony, every space station, every ship in the fleet. The entire species had come to remember. "Dr. Mitchell?" a voice called from behind her. Sarah turned to see a man in his 40s approaching. She recognized him immediately. From news reports, Dr. Alex Turner, the scientist who had rescued the survivors. His face was older now, marked by 2 years of carrying the weight of what he had witnessed. "Dr. Turner," Sarah said, shaking his hand, "I've read all your reports. Your testimony has been crucial for understanding what really happened." Alex nodded grimly. "I wish I could have saved more of them. 49 people out of 50,000, it haunts me every day." "Those 49 survivors are the reason we're here today," Sarah replied. "They're the reason all of humanity knows the truth." They walked together toward the main ceremony area, where a stage had been erected facing the memorial stones. Thousands of people filled the area, but an unnatural quiet hung over the crowd. This wasn't a celebration. It was a sacred moment. "Sarah," another voice called out. A woman approached them, leading a young girl by the hand. Sarah recognized them immediately. From the survivor interviews she had studied, Lisa Parker and her daughter Emma, now 10 years old. "Mrs. Parker," Sarah said gently, "I'm honored to meet you. Your testimony has helped us understand so much about that day. Lisa's face was composed, but her eyes held a depth of pain that 2 years had not dimmed. Please call me Lisa, and this is Emma. Emma looked up at Sarah with curious eyes. She was a pretty child with brown hair like her mother's, but there was something ancient in her gaze. Something no 10-year-old should carry. Are you the lady? Who studies memory? Emma asked. I am, Sarah replied, kneeling down to Emma's level. What do you remember about your daddy? Emma's face lit up for the first time. He used to sing to me every night. Space shanties from the old Earth ships. He said when we got to our new planet, he would teach me to plant gardens like his grandfather did. Those are beautiful memories, Sarah said softly. Mommy says it's important to remember the good things too, Emma continued. Not just the bad things. She says Daddy would want me to remember his songs, not just how he died. Sarah felt her throat tighten. This child understood something that most adults in the galaxy could not grasp. Memory wasn't just about keeping track of information. It was about keeping people alive in your heart. The ceremony began as Earth's sun reached its highest point. President Chen Wei stepped up to the podium, her voice carrying across the crowd and broadcast to every human settlement in space. 2 years ago, 50,000 of our people traveled to a distant star seeking a new home. They carried with them our hopes, our dreams, and our faith in a peaceful future among the stars. The crowd was silent except for the sound of wind moving through the memorial stones. They were murdered, President Chen continued, her voice growing stronger. Not killed in battle, not lost in an accident, murdered by beings who saw our children as threats, who saw our families as enemies, who saw our hope as something to be destroyed. She paused, looking out over the sea of faces. Today we do not gather to seek revenge. We gather to remember, because remembering is what makes us human. One by one, survivors took the stage to speak. Lisa Parker told the crowd about her husband Peter, about his dreams of building a new world for their daughter. Dr. Walsh's widow spoke about his dedication to healing others. The captain's son talked about his father's belief in exploration and discovery. Each story added another layer to the collective memory being forged that day. The Proxima Massacre wasn't just a historical event anymore. It was becoming part of human identity itself. When the last survivor had spoken, a moment of silence was called. Across the planet, every human stopped what they were doing. In space, stations around distant stars, human crews stood at attention. On colonies throughout human space, families gathered to honor the dead. The silence lasted exactly 50 minutes. 1 minute for every 1,000 people who died. Sarah found herself thinking about her alien classmates from the university. What would they make of this? Professor Zethkar would probably call it an inefficient emotional display. The Draknari student would likely see it as weakness. The Zephirites would wonder why humans didn't just access digital records instead. They still didn't understand. Memory wasn't about efficiency. It wasn't about data storage. It was about meaning. After the ceremony, Sarah walked through the memorial, again this time with Dr. Turner and the Parker family. Other families moved between the stones, some leaving flowers, others just touching the names carved in stone. What happens now? Dr. Turner asked. The Galactic Confederation has made their official response. Compensation has been paid. From their perspective, justice has been served. Justice? Lisa's voice was sharp. They offered us money for 50,000 lives. They relocated one Draknari commander to a different post. That's justice? Sarah stopped walking and faced them both. The Confederation doesn't understand justice the way we do. To them, it's about maintaining stability and preventing larger conflicts. They see the massacre as an unfortunate incident that needs to be contained and forgotten. But we won't forget, Emma said quietly. No, Sarah agreed, looking down at the girl. We won't forget, and that's going to change everything. Dr. Turner frowned. What do you mean? Sarah gestured toward the memorial stones around them. Every human child will learn these names. Every human family will know this story. It will be taught in schools, remembered in songs, carved in stone on every human world. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Other species experience trauma and then move past it for psychological health. They forget so they can heal. But humans don't heal by forgetting. We heal by remembering. We take our pain and we make it part of our strength. As if to prove her point, a group of children walked past them. They were young, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and they were reciting names from the memorial stones. Their teacher was helping them learn to pronounce the more difficult ones. 50,000 names, the teacher was saying. 50,000 people who just wanted to build a better life. Can you imagine how much hope they carried? How much love they had for their families? One little boy raised his hand. Will the bad aliens come after us too? The teacher knelt down beside him. I don't know, Marcus, but if they do, we'll be ready. Because we remember what happened here. We remember who we're protecting and why it matters. Lisa watched the children learning the names of the dead, and, for the first time in 2 years, she smiled. They're not just learning history, are they? They're learning who we are. Exactly, Sarah replied. This memorial isn't just about honoring the dead. It's about defining who we are as a species. It's about making sure every human understands that our people matter, that our children matter, that our dreams matter. Dr. Turner was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, what about the other species? What happens when they realize that humans don't forget and forgive like they do? Sarah's expression grew serious. They'll learn what it really means when humans say, we remember. Some of them will understand that this makes us valuable allies. Others will realize it makes us dangerous enemies. And the Draknari? Lisa asked, her voice cold. They think they solved a problem by destroying our colony, Sarah replied. They have no idea that they created something much worse. They created a memory that will outlive all of them. Emma tugged on her mother's hand. Mommy, can we visit Daddy's stone one more time? Lisa nodded, and they walked to the section where Peter Parker's memorial stood. Emma reached up and traced her father's name with one small finger. I still remember your songs, Daddy, she whispered. And I always will. As the sun began to set over the memorial, millions of humans started the long journey back to their homes throughout the galaxy. But they carried something new with them now. A shared memory. A shared purpose. 5 years after Proxima Centauri B, Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood in the diplomatic briefing room aboard the human cruiser Remembrance. The ship's name was no accident. Every human military vessel launched since the massacre carried the name of something, lost or someone remembered. Sarah was no longer just a scholar studying memory patterns. She had become humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, serving as cultural attaché to the human fleet. Her research had revealed uncomfortable truths about how different species processed trauma and conflict. The Zephyrite Empire has issued an ultimatum, announced Admiral Ben Rodriguez, his weathered face grim. They claim ancient territorial rights to the Tau Ceti system. They want our colonies evacuated within 30 days. Around the table sat the senior staff of the Human Defense Fleet. These were not the same humans who had watched helplessly as the New Horizon burned. 5 years of preparation had changed everything. Ancient territorial rights? Asked Commander Janet Stevens, the fleet's intelligence officer. We've been in the Tau Ceti system for 8 years. They never mentioned any claims before. They didn't need to, Sarah replied, pulling up holographic displays of her research. The Zephyrite operate on geological timescales. To them, 8 years is meaningless. They've decided they want our colonies, so they're inventing legal justification. Admiral Rodriguez's jaw tightened. Ben had lost his sister Maria in the Proxima massacre. She had been a teacher planning to start the first human school on the New World. Her name was carved in the memorial on Earth, and Ben carried her photo in his uniform pocket. What does the Galactic Confederation say? Asked Commander Stevens. The same thing they said about Proxima, Sarah answered bitterly. They're calling for peaceful negotiations and compromise. They suggest we share the system or accept compensation for relocating our colonies. Compensation, Ben repeated, his voice dangerous. Like the compensation they offered for 50,000 dead civilians. The room fell silent. Everyone present knew the history. Everyone carried the weight of what had happened 5 years ago. But more importantly, everyone knew what humanity had done with that memory. Dr. Alex Turner entered the briefing room, now serving as the fleet's xenobiology advisor. His hair had gone gray since Proxima, but his eyes burned with the same intensity that had driven him to save the survivors. "What's the tactical situation?" Alex asked, taking his seat. "The Zephyrite fleet consists of 47 vessels," Commander Stevens reported. "They're positioning themselves at the edge of the Tau Ceti system, waiting for our response to their ultimatum." "They expect us to negotiate," Admiral Rodriguez said. "They expect us to compromise and give them what they want, just like every other species does when faced with superior force." Sarah activated another display. "I've been studying Zephyrite psychology for 3 years. They see conflict as a form of crystalline resonance. They apply pressure, other species bend or break, and they achieve harmonic balance." "They've never faced a species like us," Alex observed. "No," Sarah agreed. "They've never faced a species that remembers." The briefing continued for another hour, but the real decision had already been made. It had been made 5 years ago, when 50,000 humans died while the galaxy watched and did nothing. It had been made at the memorial, when millions of humans swore that they would never again stand helpless while their people were threatened. The human response fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where other species built ships for trade, exploration, or quick strikes, humans had built ships for war. Real war. The kind of sustained, devastating conflict that could only be waged by a species that never forgot its enemies. The Remembrance led a formation of 36 human warships toward the Tau Ceti system. Each ship bore the name of someone or something lost at Proxima. The Peter Parker carried Lisa's husband's name. The New Horizon honored the destroyed colony ship. The Never Again carried the promise carved in every human heart. Admiral Rodriguez stood on his bridge as the fleet approached the Zephyrite formation. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were humans who had grown up learning the names of the Proxima dead. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "The Zephyrites are transmitting." The main screen flickered to life, showing a crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns. The Zephyrite commander spoke in harmonious tones that the translators converted to standard galactic. "Human vessels, I am Resonance Commander Vexila of the Zephyrite Empire. You will withdraw from our ancestral territory immediately. This system belongs to the crystalline peoples by right of first discovery." Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward. "I am Admiral Ben Rodriguez of the Human Defense Fleet. This system was empty when we arrived. Our people have built homes here. They've started families, they've made lives." "Temporal claims are irrelevant," Vexila chimed. "Our crystalline ancestors sang in these stars before your species existed. You will leave, or we will remove you." "No," Ben said simply. The single word seemed to confuse the Zephyrite commander. Her crystalline body flickered with uncertain patterns. "You refuse? But you are outnumbered. We have 47 vessels to your 36. Our weapons are superior. Resistance is illogical." "Let me explain something to you," Admiral Rodriguez replied, his voice carrying the weight of human memory. 5 years ago, your ally species, the Dreknari, murdered 50,000 of our civilians. Men, women, and children who were seeking a peaceful life on a new world. Vexila's patterns shifted to what might have been dismissal. Ancient history. The Confederation resolved that dispute through proper compensation. "We don't consider it resolved," Ben continued. "We remember every name, every face, every life that was taken, and we swore that we would never again let our people be slaughtered, while the galaxy stands by and does nothing." "You speak of emotion," Vexila chimed. "Emotion is inefficient. We offer you one final opportunity to withdraw peacefully." Admiral Rodriguez looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He saw determination forged in the fires of remembered loss. He saw the children who had grown up learning the names of the dead. He saw the future of humanity itself. "Dr. Turner," he said, "explain to our friend here what they're really facing." Alex stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "Commander Vexila, you've made one critical error in your calculations. You're fighting humans the way you would fight any other species. You expect us to surrender when faced with superior force. You expect us to negotiate and compromise." The Zephyrite patterns shifted to what might have been confusion. All species behave logically when facing destruction. "But we're not all species," Alex continued. "We're humans. And humans remember. Every officer on every ship in this fleet knows exactly what happened at Proxima Centauri b. They know the names of the dead. They know how those people died. They know that the galaxy's justice was nothing more than empty words and worthless credits." Sarah stepped up beside him. "You see, Commander, other species forget traumatic events to preserve their psychological health. You store memories in crystals that can be separated from your consciousness when they become too painful, but humans carry their memories in their hearts." "What does this achieve?" Vexila asked, genuine curiosity in her harmonic voice. "It means," Admiral Rodriguez said, "that we don't fight for territory or resources or ancient claims. We fight for every human child who should have grown up on Proxima b. We fight for every parent who should have seen their children take first steps on a new world. We fight for every dream that was murdered by beings who thought human life was worthless." The tactical display showed the two fleets facing each other across the void of space. The Zephyrite had superior numbers and technology, just as they claimed. In any normal engagement, the humans should have been preparing to surrender or retreat. But this was not a normal engagement. "Fire," Admiral Rodriguez ordered quietly. The human fleet opened fire with coordinated precision that shocked the Zephyrite. These were not the desperate, poorly aimed shots of a panicking enemy. These were calculated, devastating strikes from beings who had spent 5 years preparing for exactly this moment. The Remembrance's weapons tore through a Zephyrite cruiser's shields like they were made of paper. The human ships moved in formations that seemed to anticipate every Zephyrite tactic before it was deployed. "How are they doing this?" Vexila demanded of her tactical officer. "Unknown, Resonance Commander. Their weapons are more powerful than our intelligence suggested. Their tactics are unprecedented." What Vexila didn't understand was that humans had been studying this battle for 5 years. They had analyzed every aspect of Zephyrite military doctrine. They had built weapons specifically designed to counter Zephyrite shields. They had trained for this exact scenario in thousands of simulations. The Draknari had taught humanity a valuable lesson at Proxima. The galaxy was not safe for humans. The only protection humans could count on was the protection they provided for themselves. So they had prepared. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrite fleet was either destroyed or retreating in disorder. Not a single human ship had been lost, though several were damaged. 10 years after Proxima Centauri b, Professor Zethkar stood before a very different classroom. The floating chairs still adjusted to each species' needs, and the air recyclers still worked to keep the atmosphere breathable for everyone. But the students themselves had changed. Where once alien species had filled most of the seats, now humans made up nearly half the class. Young humans who had grown up learning the names of the Proxima dead. Students who had chosen to study at the Galactic University not as innocent explorers, but as representatives of a species the galaxy now treated with careful respect. The old professor's blue skin had faded with age, and his 4 arms moved more slowly than they once did. But his large black eyes still held the curiosity that had driven him to study alien species for over 3 centuries. "Welcome, students," he said, his voice carrying the weight of years. "Today we discuss what it means to be dangerous in a galactic civilization." A young Draknari student raised one clawed hand. "Professor, surely military strength determines which species are most dangerous?" Professor Zethkar smiled sadly. "An understandable assumption, Kexval. Your people once believed the same thing. How has that belief served the Draknari Empire in recent years?" The students' red scales darkened with embarrassment. Everyone knew the answer. The Draknari Empire had been systematically weakened over the past decade through a combination of economic pressure, political isolation, and precisely targeted military strikes. Not destroyed, the humans weren't genocidal, but reduced from a major galactic power to a minor regional player. War Commander Theknol, the architect of the Proxima massacre, had been found dead in his cell while awaiting trial for war crimes. Officially, it was suicide. Unofficially, no one asked too many questions. What about technological superiority? Suggested a crystalline zephyrate. Surely advanced technology makes a species dangerous. The Zephyrate Empire possessed superior technology, Professor Zethkar replied. How did that serve them at the Battle of Tau Ceti? Another uncomfortable silence. The Zephyrites were now under human occupation, their government rebuilt under strict supervision. Their military was restricted to planetary defense only. Their crystalline homeworld, once proud and independent, now flew human flags alongside their own. Emma Parker raised her hand from the back of the class. Now 20 years old and studying interspecies law, she had grown into a serious young woman with her mother's determined eyes. The little girl who had lost her father at Proxima had become one of the most promising legal minds of her generation. Professor, she said, I think you're asking the wrong question. Professor Zethkar's eyes brightened with interest. Please explain, Miss Parker. Emma stood up, her voice carrying the confidence that came from growing up in a species that had learned to trust its own strength. You're asking which species is most dangerous, but danger implies threat. The real question is, which species has the most power to shape the galaxy's future? And your answer? Humans, Emma replied without hesitation. Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we understand consequences in ways other species don't. A Vorthon student accessed his memory files quickly. Elaborate on this concept of consequences. Emma looked around the classroom, meeting the eyes of alien students who had grown up in a galaxy shaped by human memory. When the Draknari massacred our people at Proxima, they thought they were solving a territorial problem. They didn't consider the consequences. They didn't think about what would happen when 50,000 deaths became part of human culture forever. She paused, letting the words sink in. Other species experience events and then move on. You store them as historical data, or let them fade from memory for psychological health. But humans carry our experiences forward. Every human child born, since Proxima knows those names, every human family understands what happened there. Professor Zethkar nodded slowly. And how does this translate to power in the galaxy? Because we remember everything, Emma continued. We remember who helped us and who hurt us. We remember who stood with us when we were weak and who abandoned us when we needed support. And we act on those memories. To illustrate her point, Emma activated a holographic display showing current galactic politics. The Altarian Collective gave medical aid to Proxima survivors without being asked. Today they have exclusive access to human medical technology and the protection of the human fleet. Their colonies are prosperous and safe. The display shifted. The Tau Cetian Republic spoke up for human rights in the Confederation after the massacre. Now they have human trading partners, human technological advisors, and human military guarantees. Their standard of living has tripled in 10 years. Another shift. The Vorthons and Zephyrite treated Proxima as a minor inconvenience to be forgotten. The Draknari committed mass murder and expected it to be ignored. All three empires have discovered what human memory really means. A young Klaxon student clicked his mandibles nervously. Are you saying humans base all their decisions on events from a decade ago? Emma smiled, but there was steel behind it. We base our decisions on the understanding that actions have consequences, that how you treat people matters, that kindness is remembered and rewarded while cruelty is never forgotten. Professor Zethkar watched his students absorb this lesson. Many of them had never really understood why the galaxy had changed so dramatically in the past decade. They saw the rise of human influence as simply another shift in galactic politics. But Emma Parker represented something deeper. She was the living embodiment of human memory, the orphaned child whose father had died for no reason other than alien arrogance, the survivor who had grown up learning that justice delayed was not justice denied, simply justice postponed. "Miss Parker," the professor said gently, "do humans ever forgive?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. "We forgive, Professor, but we don't forget. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending something never happened. It means choosing not to let hatred consume you while still remembering the lesson." She looked directly at the Draknari student who had asked about military strength. "We've forgiven the Draknari people for the crimes of their leaders. We've helped them rebuild their society and reform their government, but we haven't forgotten why that was necessary. And we never will." The classroom was silent except for the hum of life support systems. Students from a dozen species sat processing the implications of what they were hearing. This wasn't just a lecture about human psychology. This was a lesson about the new reality of galactic civilization. Professor Zethkar stood and walked to the center of the room, just as he had done 10 years earlier, when a young human student had first tried to warn him about human memory. "Let me share something with you," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his years. "I have been studying alien species for over 3 centuries. I have cataloged the strengths and weaknesses of hundreds of civilizations. I thought I understood what made species dangerous." He paused, looking around at faces that represented the future of galactic civilization. "I was wrong. I confused danger with aggression. I confused power with violence. I confused strength with the ability to destroy." The old professor's eyes found Emma Parker in the back of the class. "A young human once tried to explain this to me. She said humans were dangerous because they remembered. I dismissed her words as primitive sentimentality." He smiled sadly. "I understand now. Humans aren't dangerous because they can destroy their enemies. They're dangerous because they can build their friends. They remember kindness as clearly as they remember cruelty. They reward loyalty as completely as they punish betrayal." A Altarian student, her fur shifting to colors of curiosity, raised her hand. "Professor, are you saying humans control the galaxy through memory?" "Not control," Professor Zethkar replied. "Influence, leadership. There's a difference. Control requires constant force. Leadership requires trust, and trust is built on the foundation of memory." He activated his own display, showing trade routes, military alliances, and cultural exchanges throughout the galaxy. "Look at the patterns. Species that treated humans with respect and kindness now enjoy unprecedented prosperity. Species that viewed humans as weak or expendable have found themselves isolated and diminished. This isn't conquest," he continued. "This is consequence. Natural, predictable consequence based on how different species chose to treat humanity when they were vulnerable." Emma raised her hand again. "Professor, you said my ancestor tried to explain this to you years ago. What would you say to her now, if you could?" Professor Zethkar's expression grew thoughtful. "I would tell her that her species doesn't just remember the past. You shape the future by remembering. You make sure that kindness is rewarded and cruelty is punished, not through revenge, but through the natural consequences of how civilizations treat each other." He paused, then added, "I would also apologize for my arrogance, and I would ask her to teach me more about what it means to remember with purpose." The class period was nearly over, but the professor had one more point to make. "You are all part of the first generation to grow up in a galaxy where human memory shapes interspecies relations. You will inherit a civilization where actions have consequences, where kindness is remembered and